All right, guys, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you so much for coming to the OpenLot Expo. So put your hands together for yourself, for your commitment to be in the right room with the right people. What we're going to share today, and I know we're sitting in Melbourne, but why Queensland is the #1 place at the moment to invest, and it's on our checklist. And what I'd like you to do is just look at this with an open mind, and if you have any questions, come and see us at C23. So just a little bit about what I do and how we help people. So I run a company called Houseland Co. Over the last 20 years, I've been in property, been buying property myself since I was 18. I started as the client and then worked with the builders and the land developers. In that time, we've done over $1 billion in transactions. We've helped 1,100 families create wealth through property. And our biggest focus really is creating cash flow positive properties rather than negatively geared. The reason for that is that's the cash is king. That's where you're going to create the income. So with that said, what we've done is we've partnered up today with Homecorp, which is Australia's and Queensland's #2 builder in Queensland. We focus on cash flow positive properties for one reason, and that is the bank likes it. They like it when you've got more money coming in. If you have issues with serviceability or your finance, what they're liking is seeing an extra $200 or $300 per week coming in. Rather than having to work for your money, you're getting your money to work for you. Now, we're going to cover off the property investment checklist. These are the things, the top 10 things you should know, whether you're purchasing from us or you're purchasing as an investor before you actually do your due diligence and purchase a brand new property. Now, the big question is why in Queensland? So just by a show of hands, who likes Queensland? Is it a lot hotter? It's why 75,000 people have just moved there in the last 12 months. Apart from a few little lockdowns that we had here, there's been a huge shift up there, and one of the main reasons is affordability. In Melbourne, for around about $500,000 or $600,000, you're typically buying around about a 300 square metre block, maybe a 3 or 4 bedroom home in a turnkey if you're working with new. In Queensland, for the same amount of money, you're getting around about a 5 to 6% yield versus a 3.2%. You're getting land over 400 square metres, maybe 400 to 500 square metres. And of course, the affordability is there, which means you can multiply your wealth a lot quicker. There we go. Let's go to that. So just passing over to Dan here, who's come down to support us at C23. He's going to talk to you a little bit about Homecorp and what they're doing as a builder in Queensland and South Australia.
Fantastic. Thanks, Steve. Dan Hillier is my name. I am the National Sales Marketing Manager for Homecorp Property Group. Founded in 2004 by Ron Bakir. We are a land developer and a construction company. We work on townhouses, house and land packages and apartments in the mid-rise and high-rise spacing, mostly focused on the Gold Coast in that sector. Recently, we voted, after our numbers come through HIA, the second largest home builder in Queensland, just behind Metricon, who's Australia's largest home builder. We are the 15th largest builder of homes in the country. So I think those numbers are important when selecting a builder, working someone who is known, proven, trusted, and also has that strong financial backing, which I think is more important than ever. If you read the newspapers around construction companies. We are 51% owned by Masaya Homes in Japan. They are one of the most innovative house builders in Japan. 50 years old, developed over 1.3 million homes. So fantastic to have that support behind us and credibility in delivering houses. Recent numbers we just went through. And you're going to turn it over about positive cash flow properties.
Okay, guys, so just by a show of hands, who actually has investment properties in the crowd here? By a show of hands, who has negative geared properties in the crowd? Who would like to have more money come in their bank than go out? By a show of hands. Me too. So that's why we focus on positive geared properties. So basically all that means is that you work out, for example, let's say your rent was $40,000 per year. You divide that by your purchase price, might be $500,000, and you times it by 100. But effectively what we try and focus on with the strategies is finding properties that offer over 5% rental yield, and you're still maximising your capital growth. So what the bank may want to look at, and with your strategies, you may want to have 2 positive geared properties, and then you need to manufacture some equity. So then we go and find an area that's closer to the CBD, and you get the capital growth, and you go again. I myself found an issue around about 10 years ago where I was holding a significant amount of negatively geared properties and relocated to Melbourne, and for a short time had to replace my income. I can tell you can't write off zero. When you've got positive geared properties, the advantage that we had during COVID was I had no clients ring me and say I have any issues. They're still able to service the properties, you don't have to go to work, and the ultimate goal should be to set yourself up so that you can actually have your properties doing the work for you. So with that said, we're going to go over to the property investment checklist. I'll get Dan to cover off some of these things here.
Yeah, thanks. Similar to an investor as a land developer, we have our due diligence and checklist like you should as well. The fundamentals, I guess, if you had the crystal ball for capital growth, are quite easy. It's remembering the old pie, the population, infrastructure and investment spending, and employment nodes. Second tier to that, you'd be running in transport and education. They're the things that we look for. We're invested in, I guess, sectors within Queensland. We like to get in nice a bit early, create value within the land by the time that the house is built. And by that time selecting, we've seen growth over the last 4 years in every single project we have now delivered. You're going to talk a little bit more about our hotspot as you've been selecting for your clients.
So guys, feel free to take some photos if you need to, but this is the area in Queensland we've identified to be the strongest in growth. So really, what we're seeing here is it's located really between Brisbane and Gold Coast. The reason for that is if you were, imagine yourself relocating to from Melbourne, and you live somewhere in maybe Logan, for example, and your partner worked up in Brisbane, and your other partner, hopefully you don't have two partners, they worked out in Gold Coast. So don't do that, you'll get in trouble. Now, with that said though, what will happen is you're around about 30 minutes drive between the two. You're actually still close to, I guess, the beach, and you've got the proximities and you have the school zoning. But one of the most popular things about the Logan area is there's over 200,000 population. Then we go inland a little bit, which is about 30 minutes sort of inland is Ipswich. So Ipswich has been identified as one of Australia's leading suburbs. And the reason I know that's successful is I had a fly-in, fly-out worker about 18 months ago purchase off me. He started initially with a $70,000 deposit, and within 18 months he's onto his fourth property now, and we've created over $800,000 worth of equity. So what that means is he's able to keep going and going and going again, and now we're identifying super funds as well. Another area that we'll touch on is Toowoomba, just to keep an eye on that, and of course up to Moreton Bay. But I might just get Dan and just talk a little bit about Ipswich and I guess Toowoomba. What's going on there, Dan?
Yeah, I'll run into the locations that we're heavily invested in at the moment. And we do work on metro and working in regional. And they both offer different opportunities from a price point, yield, long-term versus short-term gains as well. Yeppoon, we've been invested up there in Rockhampton for the last 6-7 years now. The Sunshine Coast for the last 4 years. In Gympie, we have our own land development project, building out there a couple hundred houses. Toowoomba, we just bought a recent 300 lot subdivision, which we're going to launch next Thursday. There are some packages we're sending your way before they hit the market. Brisbane, as most builders should be on their radar as well, heavily invested up there. The Gold Coast in house and land, townhouse, we do mid-rise and high-rise developments down there as well. And the Ipswich, and Logan corridor has been somewhere for the last 10 years we've been invested in, and certainly over the last 2 years we've seen our greatest growth corridor.
We've seen packages there for only 12 months ago for a house and land for $420,000. So what that means, if you're thinking about somewhere like Berwick or Werribee or anything like that at the moment, typically you're spending around about $400,000 for 400 square metres. In Queensland, you're getting a house put on top of that as well. So it's a lot of value. These are full turnkey packages which include landscaping, fences, blinds and cooling, which means there's no additional cost outside of that. But really what we want to really look at is, I guess, the Queensland population growth. So I'll get Dan to touch on why has Queensland been so popular at the moment?
Really, I don't want to go beating my own drum too much down here in Victorian territory, but I'm only here for a short time, so you'll get rid of me soon. But look, going through the population, it's quite easy to see here. Double the amount of change, the improvement compared to New South Wales and Victoria. And then that, goes through to, which is the most exciting one, is where they're going, where they're leaving, where they're coming. We haven't had a whole lot of it. As soon as COVID happened, the investors, probably the interstate investors, first thing they did is they, relinquished and sold a couple of investments to make sure they were, safeguarded financially during what they, were unbeknown what COVID would bring us. What that did is obviously took a lot of supply of the rental market out. Owner-occupiers came in through different grants that the government was doing. The first-home buyers really came in, and really developers actually stopped selling their properties to investors because of the cost of sale and started working with the owner-occupiers. What that's done is gave us a really shortage in the supply of investment properties to tenancies, and now we're seeing, the Gold Coast, which is locked down, all below 1%, in vacancy rates. So the way that vacancy rates work is that at 3.3%, that's an equilibrium market. So that's where supply and demand meet each other. So certainly as we push down below 1%, that's when you're seeing those rising prices.
So I guess in
value.
Easy terms, really, we're having, with our Queensland market, we're having about 15 to 20 applications per property. So there really is a shortage up there. As I said, I know we're spruiking Queensland at the moment, but at the end of the day, we identify these areas to create the income. So the advantage with having 15 to 20, applications is, one, you can put the price up if need be, but two, you get the ability to actually hand select your tenant, which gives you, growth long term. So I guess the other thing too is Brisbane in 2032, Dan, what's happening there?
Yeah, a little thing called the Olympics. So it's our turn. I think that's going to be just a really golden period. Built on investment spending. I think you look at all the cities that have had the Olympics. We're going to see a strong 10 years go through. But I will touch on a couple other points, because someone asked me before earlier today. It's well spread that Southeast Queensland's had a massive growth spurt over the last sort of 12 months. Have I missed it? As the bus already left, it's well publicised, between 20 and 30%, depending on what property you've had, has already moved up. Rising house prices and building construction, and holding costs and interest rates. So there's a lot of fundamentals to go through. We're more than happy to have a chat to you and put you in contact with the right people, and in C23 as well. But what we're seeing now is that with the price rising over the last 2 years, the rental yield, you can see here from 2021, is now starting to increase because of that lack of supply and what I spoke to you about owner-occupiers. So the yield is now coming back up, which is a great thing as interest rates are rising as well. So perfect timing within there. And then we're going to talk a little bit about some hotspots. We won't go too much into detail about this. We are heavily invested, as I said, in a number of corridors. I'm more than happy to have a conversation with you in the booth. But much like I've spoken before, why do we pick the location? We're there for the long term as well. We do our big master plan developments as well. So we're not just going into communities where we're, picking the eyes out of projects. We're master planning. We know what's developed next door. We control the streetscape. We invest in the community long term, and we control that owner-occupier and investor ratio, which is important.
I think the biggest thing there to really share is the money's not made with the property. The money's made in the land. So the bigger the lot size, that's where you're going to get your growth long term. So we're just touching on Logan because at the moment we have a couple of projects which are tiled and ready to go. And if you haven't or haven't built before, but what we need to know, in the building side is the confidence in the build to actually complete. There's a little bit, so the elephant in the room is at the end of the day, a lot of clients have been seeing at us at our stalls have said to us, look, can your builder complete? Now the fact that we're 51% owned and backed by Toyota, the advantage that we have with that is that this is just one, drop in the ocean for this company here. The other thing too, when you're looking at building, is you're looking at the inclusions that are there. So we want to have things like 900 appliances, Caesar stone throughout. They need to. The other thing that Homecorp provides is 600 by 600 porcelain tiles. So it's almost like a display home village, but you're still getting the invested product. The advantage with that is if you do come to resell it, or you need to get the property genuinely revalued to pull out equity, that's great. The other thing too, with the Melbourne market, if you guys in the last 2 years have seen a substantial increase in your property prices. So all you really need to do is unlock around about $100,000 to $120,000 of equity, which is already sitting there, and just shift that to another property. The advantage with that is you're getting tax depreciations, equity, and you actually build your portfolio a lot quicker.
Fantastic. Look, just touching on Logan, what we went through before, looking at just under $9 billion of infrastructure projects. I've been to a number of these seminars before and expos, and developers come up and talk about proposed all the time. I think it's really important to have a look at the projects that are already underway. It's not about waiting for the next 10 years of growth. It's about what growth can I get in the short term to allow me to start building that property portfolio as well. So with price points, as you touched on before, we're sitting, packages starting at $500,000 all the way past $1 million. And we also invested in South Australia. We've got an office down there, which is a bit of a price point driven market as that affordability is going down as well. But our major focus will remain in Queensland, southeast Queensland, in known, proven, trusted corridors.
Okay, so what I'd like to do here is if there's any questions after this as well, but if there's anything you'd like to know, but what we might touch on now is actually what's actually happening with builders around the market. There's some of the issues that we're coming up against in the last 12 months was shortage of supplies, labour price increases. Do people hold contracts? Do they rip them up? Fixed price contracts? I think the most important thing that you need to be looking at, whatever builder you're dealing with, is trying to get away from provisional sums and working with, I guess, no tenders, but fixed price contracts that hold for 12 months, not 3 months and we'll review. We're about holding the price. If the project goes over with the land, we'll still fix the price. And most importantly, what we need to look at is guess looking into 2030. Is the builder still going to be around in 8 to 9 years? Is they going to be sustainable? Because that's important when you've got builder's warranty, insurance, and of course confidence in who you're dealing with. At the end of the day, what we're trying to do is build a long-term relationship with our clients. What we might just touch on is what's actually happening in the industry at the moment that's causing, I guess, some concern. So let's not just focus on the pros, but let's look at some of the things that are actually going on in the market if we can, Dan.
Yes, certainly. Look, it's been a tough year for a lot of builders in construction in the last 12 months. Who would have thought that, what we've been through? And if we look at materials, it's widespread that there's been shortages. We do have wait times, and it's really important to have that procurement measures correct and have your ordering facilities in place. We are seeing, a little bit more of a relaxation over the last sort of 3-4 months in, skilled labour, which is quite good. We've been fortunate enough to pick up a number of other contractors and builders to come under our banner as well. We've also, acquired some other companies as well, which has come in and helped boost our supply level. But if you look at fixed pricing, I think that's a really, really important one, having that security and understanding that when you sign a contract, that contract's going to be seen through. And that's certainly what we offer at Homecorp. We haven't torn up, we've worked with our clients. We like to think of ourselves as the partner. We are the land developer in most cases and the builder, and I think that's important because we can work together, have transparency, and are there from, that cradle to grave. It's not just the land gets settled and we're out, or we're not, not involved in the land development at the front end. So that's a really good piece, an important one when selecting a builder, to have that visibility as well.
I think the most challenging thing normally when selecting a builder is actually waiting for the contract. So by show of hands, who's had to wait more than 1 month before for a building contract? Nobody. That's great. Then don't go with them. So, anyway, what that means basically is if you have, typically what happens, you go through a colour gallery selection. The longer you wait, the more the price is going to go up. And that reason can be also yourself, but you've actually got time invested, you've got colour gallery, you've got supply issues. What we try and do is provide a contract within 48 hours. The quicker you get a contract, the quicker you give that to your bank, the quicker you can actually get your finance approved. And then you need to look at time on site. So typically after settling a block of land, I've heard of builders out there waiting 6 to 12 months to get permits. The issue in that time is you're still servicing these land loans. Ideally what you want to try and do is get to site straight away. Homecorp is able to generally provide a permit within 4 to 6 weeks of settlement and be on site just a couple of weeks after that. Typical building time at the moment, we used to be able to get these things finished in 16 to 20 weeks. At the moment, realistically, most builders are sort of sitting around about 6 to 7 months. So just keep that in mind when you're paying this thing down. So there is a couple of ways that you can actually build that into your finance so you can minimise your expenses while building. But ideally what we want to try and do is get you through the property as quick as possible. The other thing that we do at House Landco, and keeping in mind that I have a national company, is I actually educate rather than sell. So what that means is that I'll actually take my clients to site, walk you through your property under construction, help you identify your own areas that you should invest in, And of course, open-minded. If we can't serve you, we'd certainly gladly recommend another builder that can. We are an Australian-wide business, and we try and look at areas. At the moment, Queensland's on the mark. Next year, we probably could be talking about South Australia because of price point. But at the moment, land supply is coming back in. There is still some titled land around. So it means there is some good buying. And of course, if you come and see us, we're prepared to do some deals. C23. Dan, just before we wrap up, anything else?
Probably more so to see if there's any other questions in there. I know some of you can just come around and see us, but full disclosure from our end, so no, I'm all good.
Oh, perfect.
Awesome. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, guys. Have a great day. Ciao.